Hello everyone, it's me, Aaron, and it is day 3 of our look back at all the comics from 2018 as we count down the 100 best books of the year. Yesterday we did numbers 50 through 26, which means we are getting really close to finally hitting the finale. So today, let's continue marching on with numbers 25 through 11. Number 25, Weatherman. If you're a fan of high-concept science fiction and unlikable schlubby characters merging together, then I can pretty much guarantee that you're going to enjoy Weatherman, because I'm a fan of those two things, and I love this book. It's the story of a weatherman on Mars, and not just any weatherman on Mars, the most popular weatherman in weather history. He's a rock star. Everyone loves him. Everyone tunes in for his show, and they can't wait to see what he's going to do next. Except there's one problem. Years ago, the Earth was destroyed and billions of people lost their lives, and it turns out this weatherman may or may not be the person who was responsible for it. This book is funny and jam-packed with action, and every character is someone you're going to want to follow. Number 24, Black Hammer: Age of Doom. It's hard for a book that's been around for years now to remain fresh and not start to feel like it's falling into a routine. Leave it to Jeff Lemire to flip the entire table over on you to keep you invested. Finally, after all this time, we're starting to get answers to the mystery of Black Hammer, and I'll admit, when I finally learned what this had all been about, I was actually speechless. I had no idea what to make of it, which is actually a positive for me because it means that there's countless possibilities still to be explored, and if Lemire is willing to shift so much around this late into the game, then who knows what else is on the way. Number 23, Prince and the Dressmaker. Years ago, I read a book called In Real Life by Jen Wang, and I fell in love with it, and I wanted to see what she was going to do next, and now all these years later, she's returned with Prince and the Dressmaker, and I will gladly say it's arguably even better than In Real Life. This is the story of a poor dressmaker who has an eye for fashion, and one day one of her dress designs catches the eye of a young prince. You see, this prince loves dresses and loves putting them on, but he knows that he'll be shunned for this. But the dressmaker doesn't care. She's just happy someone wants to hire her. So this becomes a story about two strangers from very different walks of life forming a very strong friendship with one another over this secret. I won't tell you where this series goes, but let's just say that you're going to go from joy to tears and back again in this very heartwarming book. Number 22, Avengers: No Surrender. Whenever a series announces it's going to go weekly, I think many comic book fans get nervous because we can count on one hand how many times that's been done successfully. But this year, you could add Avengers: No Surrender to that list because this is easily one of the best Avengers-centric stories in the history of that team. It united a team that over the past decade had kept dividing and spreading further across the Marvel Universe, and it brought them all together in a way that made the team feel whole. It found a way to give almost every single member of this massive roster a chance to shine and some time to get inside their head. And it had a finale that had multiple memorable moments that showed each of these heroes at their best, brought back a very tiny detail that was set up at the very beginning of this storyline that was genius, and made all Avengers fans jump up and pump their fist in joy, seeing this team really being everything that it should be. Number 21, Judas. They say every villain is the hero of their own story, and this book applies that to a character whose story we've never really heard before. Judas, the apostle who betrayed Jesus in the Bible. In this book, we see the root of his doubts, why he was angry at God, and what happened to him after he met his end and was sent to hell. Yeah, this isn't a Judas origin story, it's the ultimate and then what happened story, because it's the tale of Judas in hell, having to reflect on his past as he's tempted by Lucifer all over again, along with one huge X factor thrown in there that I dare not spoil. If you want a book that is one massive character exploration, then you can't go wrong with Judas. You can't go wrong with Judas. That's a very weird sentence to say out loud. I feel like a decade of Sunday school teachers are being very disappointed in me right now. Number 20, this is another two titles that we are merging together. Thor and Mighty Thor. This year, Jason Aaron continued his build-up to the War of the Realms event, and after he's taken all this time setting up every single possible piece that we could imagine being set up, I found myself practically salivating at the thought of finally hitting the climax of this story. But let's be real, the main reason this entry is this high on the list was because of the conclusion to Mighty Thor. The death of Jane Foster was one of the saddest moments of the year, only to then turn into one of the most uplifting moments of the year, all following one of the best battles of the year. This one storyline topped so many of our list of favorite things from 2018, but then again, Jason Aaron's Thor run has been so good, we've kind of come to expect that. Number 19, Kill or Be Killed. Ed Brubaker has written several thrillers that have kept us engaged for years, and for me personally, Kill or Be Killed has been my favorite. It's the story of a man who, after attempting suicide, was saved by a demon who tells him that he has to go out and kill for him if he wants to keep living. Now, this was the year that everything came to a head. And I don't want to spoil too much, but let's just say this year started with him in a mental asylum, and it just got worse for him from there. Every single twist just made an already complex situation even worse. Throughout this entire year, you kept asking, is the demon real? Is our hero actually insane? Is any of this real? And with each issue, you kept falling into this hole until you had no idea how there was any way out. Number 18, Exit Stage Left, The Snagglepuss Chronicles. I'm going to start by admitting I'm actually kind of mad at writer Mark Russell's because for the past 2 years I had to tell complete strangers in my comic book shop that The Flintstones was one of the best satires of modern life ever put into a comic book, and they all looked at me like I'm crazy. And now, this year, because of him, I have to tell all of you that Snagglepuss is one of the best looks at the effects of McCarthyism on entertainment and what it was like to be a member of the LGBTQ community in the 1950s. I know how insane that sounds, but it's not just me saying this. I've seen this book get nominated for Best Historical Series by certain critics. I repeat, a comic about Snagglepuss is being considered one of the best historical books of the year. And you know something? Yeah, it is. I can't argue with people nominating it for that. Look past the big pink panther in the room and look at what people are actually saying in this and what this book is capturing about the crushing pressure of the times and how it delivers all of that through some of the wittiest dialogue of the year, and I think you'll also agree with me. Number 17, Drawn to Berlin. This is a book about Ollie Fitzgerald, an artist working at a center for asylum seekers in Berlin. She leads a class there teaching people who have escaped war-torn countries looking for refuge how to draw. This book is about her conversations and experiences with each of her students and how she was able to tell so much about their past and their current situation through their art. She tries to encourage them to bring out what's in their head, and by doing so, she learns of the horrors that they've seen and how every one of them has learned to approach that and what they're facing today in very different ways. All the while, she has to think about her place in Berlin, a city that at the time is rapidly changing. Each year, there's that one book that always hits me hard that's just about people sharing their struggles, and this year, Drawn to Berlin was it. Number 16, Thanos. This was the book where I feel most readers learned about Donny Cates, and that's no surprise because reading his Thanos book was like having all the madness inside Cates' mind shoved into your face like a pie in a Three Stooges movie. And what's so amazing about that? What's so incredible about the fact that this book is one of the most imaginative and insane and action-packed books of the year is that this book really only has about 6 characters, 2 of whom don't even really talk, and another 2 of whom are technically the same person. And yet every single character had so many surprises behind them that you would find your jaw dropping from one reveal after another. And the way that it all wrapped up embodied exactly what makes Thanos such a chilling villain. Number 15, Paper Girls. Every single year I think there's no way that Paper Girls can continue to get weirder, and yet every single year I am proven to be wrong. This story about a group of paper delivery girls from the 80s going on a time travel adventure has gone in directions I never could have considered, and yet it never feels too complex. It never feels like pure chaos. It never feels like they're just making up the rules as they go. Every story beat feels like it was put in place with perfect precision. And this year, we saw these girls travel into the future where they learned some pretty startling revelations that I never would have guessed at in a million years. And it reminded us this book really is capable of having anything happen. Number 14, Cosmic Ghost Rider. This book gets on the list for just being pure madness given form. I've often described Donny Cates' brain as being a chaos engine, and I mean that in the best way possible. And the Cosmic Ghost Rider series from this year is exactly what I look for from this writer. And I'll go ahead and admit right here, when this book was announced, my very first reaction was, really? I mean, I like Cosmic Ghost Rider in the Thanos book, but does he really deserve a series? Where are you going to take that? How much story does he still have left to tell? And the answer was everywhere and everything. On the last episode, I talked about Scott Snyder's Justice League and how it felt like DC let Snyder open up the DC toy box and play with whatever he wanted. This feels like Marvel let Cates open up their toy box and he just smashed it all up, set it on fire, then glued it back together in whatever way he could think. And it was so darn cool that you kind of wanted to see him keep going. Number 13, Wrong Earth. I know that every single year when I do the top 100, I get overexcited about stuff and I end up exaggerating stuff. I end up saying, this is the best thing ever several times. This is the most creative thing ever. This is the best thing of this ever. However, I promise you, I am not over-exaggerating when I say, this is one of the most genius concepts for a superhero book I've ever read. The best way that I can sum it up is imagine if the Adam West Batman ended up swapping places with the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns Batman. Both of them get sent to the other's world and are now searching for a way home. The grizzled, brutal, broken version of this hero is now finding himself in an upbeat world where everyone can be trusted and loves him. And the campy, hopeful do-gooder now is in a world where even the police are evil and everyone is terrified just of the sight of him. It's one of those concepts that seems so obvious, like someone should have done this years ago, but no one has. And I remember when I was reading this, the moment I realized that's what this book was about, my jaw dropped at how smart that is. Okay, we've only got 2 more for today's episode. But number 12, 11, and 10 kept going back and forth for me. I changed their order about 8 times just in the last day alone. It's that close. But at number 12, I have to go with West Coast Avengers. I love good character interactions. To me, that's the unspoken hero of a solid comic book. It's the thing that makes a good team book turn into a great team book. And West Coast Avengers has hands down the best character interactions of any team book this year. Heck, I'd even be willing to say it's got the second best character interactions of any book period this year, but you'll learn more about that in tomorrow's episode. Every single line of dialogue in this book lets you know who these characters are, where they are in this team and in their careers, and was laugh out loud hilarious. I laughed more at one issue of this book than I did at the entire run of almost any other series this year. The setting, the roster, the villains, everything about this book captures the kookier comedic side of the Marvel Universe that I love. And the framing device of having this team have to do interviews for a reality show provides the perfect timing for many of the book's best jokes. And a lot of what makes this dialogue and these character interactions work is the fact that every single member of this team is so different and so unique, and they all have their own specific voice that really makes every single one of them a standout star in this book. And lastly for today's episode, at number 11, X-Men Red. The best thing I can say about X-Men Red is that this book, more than anything I've read since probably the Grant Morrison X-Men run, feels like the natural progression of an X-Men book. The X-Men have always been a series about heroes fighting to save a world that hates and fears them, which you don't have to be a philosophy major to look at that and see how it's a metaphor for people facing discrimination in the real world. And this year, Tom Taylor took many recent events in our world and interpreted them perfectly into the X-Men landscape. He took the idea of bot Twitter accounts spreading fear and hate and was able to morph that into a modern version of the Sentinels, and it felt absolutely natural. But even against these ever-changing threats, the X-Men still stood up there as the bastion of strength and togetherness that we all need today. When you have scenes in here of Jean Grey preventing the police from hunting down mutants, not by fighting them, but by making them understand that these mutants are people, just like them. Or scenes where Jean Grey tells her team that they're going to fight this hate with understanding, they're going to weaponize the truth. Moments like that not only embody everything that I think of when I think about Charles Xavier's dream, but they also feel like really important messages that an X-Men book should be making today. But that is it for today's episode. That is numbers 25 through 11. We only have one more episode to go. So if you want to see the top 10 comics of 2018, then come back tomorrow and make sure that you hit that subscribe button and ring that bell and follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/ProfessorThory so that way you know when that episode goes up. And if you want to help us out here on this channel, then you can always find us on Patreon at patreon.com/ProfessorThory or just share these videos around the web. Doesn't cost you anything, and it really is the best way to help this channel grow. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and I'll see you tomorrow for the finale.